Nosema ceranae infection in Apis mellifera causes earlier age of foraging and increased flight activity in foragers. In this study, Apis mellifera are used as the model organism. The reason for this is because it is the most common type of honeybee found in the United States. In regards to Nosema ceranae is a parasite known to infect honeybee colonies. More specifically, it is a spore-forming fungus that infects and reproduces in the midgut of honeybees. This parasite is transmitted between different honeybees through ingestion of spores. There has already been some research conducted on the impact of Nosema ceranae on Apis mellifera. One of the major impacts of this parasite is that it increases the energy needs of Apis mellifera. The reason behind this is that the Nosema ceranae can change the metabolism of honeybees. Specifically, both carbohydrate metabolism and sugar metabolism can be altered. Additionally, Nosema ceranae has been found to prevent apoptosis in epithelial cells of honeybees. As you can see, most of the information currently known about the impact of Nosema ceranae is in regards to how the Nosema ceranae can cause mortality in honeybees. It can cause mortality through changes in metabolism and prevention of apoptosis. Beyond causing mortality in honeybees, the question arises how these physiological changes caused by Nosema ceranae can cause changes in behavior of honeybees. This brings up the research question, how does Nosema ceranae impact foraging behaviors in Apis mellifera? One research study conducted by Goblerch et al. Examined how Nosema ceranae impacted the age of foraging in Apis mellifera. In this experiment, bees were paint marked to indicate whether they were inoculated with Nosema ceranae or not. There were 100 bees per treatment introduced into each of the 8 field colonies. Foraging behavior was observed during 30-minute sessions. The results of the experiment are shown in this graph. In this graph, the left axis indicates the returning pollen foragers, and the bottom axis shows the age of the bees. Additionally, the black bars indicate Nosema-infected bees, while the gray bars indicate bees that are not infected. Overall, it was found that there was a greater number of infected bees compared to non-infected bees foraging. More specifically, there were greater than 10 foragers in 8 of the 15 days observed in infected bees, while there was greater than 10 foragers observed in only 1 of the 15 days. That day was when the bee was 16 days old. Overall, there was a greater number of infected bees that were foraging compared to non-infected bees. This indicates that Nosema ceranae can cause earlier age of foraging. Since the researchers found Nosema ceranae causes an earlier age of foraging, they then wanted to see why this happened. To do this, the researchers decided to examine how Nosema ceranae can impact and change the physiological process that controls when a honeybee starts foraging. Overall, the physiological process that controls age of foraging is hormonal. These hormones include the yolk precursor protein vitellogenin, or VG, and the endocrine factor juvenile hormone, or JH. First, the researchers looked at the VG levels of honeybees infected with Nosema ceranae. In the graph, the black bar shows infected honeybee VG levels, and the gray bar shows non-infected honeybee VG levels. They found that the infected bees had a lower level at day 4 and 8. Then the levels linearly increased until day 16. This trend was the opposite of what the normal trend of the hormone is, which is to increase until day 8 and then decrease. Then the researchers looked at the JH levels of honeybees infected with Nosema ceranae. Again, the black bar indicates infected honeybee levels, and the gray bar indicates non-infected honeybee levels. They found that in infected honeybee levels, JH spiked at day 8. Overall, the researchers found that the pattern of hormone expression of both VG and JH was atypical in infected honeybees. Specifically, the VG levels were low until day 8 and then increased, while the JH levels spiked at day 8. What this means is that Nosema ceranae most likely triggers premature foraging due to its impact on the physiological process of hormone expression that plays a role in initiating foraging. An additional experiment conducted by Dosabit et al. Also looked at the impact of Nosema ceranae on foraging behaviors. In his experiment, there were 4 different colonies, and each colony had a certain number of workers infected with Nosema ceranae. The results are outlined and highlighted in the table. First, the number of exits per day per bee column shows that the Nosema-infected bees had a greater number of exits compared to the non-infected bees. Additionally, in the age to exit highlighted section, it is indicated through the data that compared to the non-infected bees, infected bees were more likely to exit their juvenile state and start foraging earlier. Like in the experiment previously looked at, the researchers wanted to examine how changes in physiological processes caused by Nosema ceranae creates these behavioral changes of earlier age of foraging and longer flight times of foragers. The researchers decided to examine and measure the EO levels of honeybees. The reason for this is because EO regulates behavioral maturation of nurses, delaying onset of foraging. The results of this are shown in the graph here, where the black or colored bars are infected bees, and the white bars are controls. Overall, infected bees had a higher EO level. Overall, the researchers found that the infected bees had an earlier onset of age of foraging and higher flight activity in the foragers. This was due to Nosema ceranae causing an increase in EO levels. Overall, it can be concluded that Nosema ceranae causes 2 changes to foraging behaviors in Apis mellifera. First, Nosema ceranae causes earlier onset of foraging. The reason for this is because infection causes changes in the JH, VG, and EO expression, which ultimately changes behavioral maturation in Apis mellifera. Secondly, Nosema ceranae infection causes foragers to have higher flight activity and longer flight times due to the infection causing an increased expression in EO. The significance of this is that the changes in foraging behavior can reduce pollinating services because foraging behaviors will be different. The second impact is because the foraging behaviors are altered and bees are foraging earlier and for longer, it increases the likelihood of colony decline over time.